Stuart College, please come down as well.
I want to start, Clint, if we can, with the source material, with the book, with the novella, because it has this quality of being poetic, non-chronological, but associative around the character, the themes, the rhythms, its preoccupations. And you both honor the spirit of that, but you also, I think, really created your own language, your own visual conception of that film. And I just want to start by, Dennis Johnson's an intimidating author to adapt. How did you go about deciding what you wanted to make of that story?
Yeah, thank you. It was there's something very magical and special about the book. If you haven't read it, it's like 117 pages long, and it just kind of jumps around all over the place. But yet, you get to the end of it, you can read it in like 2 hours, and yet you feel like you've experienced an entire life. And that felt something like something very special to try and do with cinema. It was to try and see all these moments and feel all these moments and let them kind of feel them gliding past like they do in our lives. And how you look up and 5 years is gone, and these little moments that felt very simple at the time, then you look back and you realize they kind of defined your life. And that just felt like something very kind of it felt like something nice to try and do. It's very fucking difficult. I didn't know how hard it would be as we got into it, but yeah, it was something beautiful when from the book.
Well, and it seems like one of the things, once you get into it too, the film takes on a life of its own, and some of the things that you would have shot in a certain way or written in a certain way, because I know when we saw it, it was a very different beginning. It was a different, you had to rearrange it as it took on a life of its own.
And that was something that, I don't know, it's just an aspect of I'm still very much learning how to make movies, but a big part of it, I think, is just listening to what the movie wants. And that's something that it's an iterative process in the script, and then in the filming, listening to what your actors and your team is pulling together. And then I have to shout out Parker Laramie, our editor, who's just a golden goose. And real storyteller when it comes to figuring out this and learning what the film needs, even in the edit, even up until a few weeks back.
Yeah. Joel, can I ask you, because one of the things was when I was writing the program notes, it's really hard to ascribe certain things to this character. There's something so elusive about what is going on, and your performance is incredible, but also you really try to read into it. So I'm just wondering, how did you find for yourself that thing that is so elusive? Because it can't be elusive to you, right?
Or can
It can.
I'm quite interested, and I have been interested watching characters that are not necessarily typically super proactive. I do believe that probably a greater percentage of people in the world are moved by the world rather than move the world by their own will. And I'm really interested in the idea that some of us don't believe we have the power to change things around us. And we have to absorb terrible things and find a way to move on. And there's a silence to this character that I think a lot of people can relate to. And that, I think the challenge was sort of finding that there's a lot of stuff in this film that really resonates with me, particularly as a parent. I think everybody, their greatest fears are in this story. And even though I'm an actor, I'm a logger. I'm now starting to think, how do I change my life to not be away from my kids? So I really related so much to this. And even though I feel like I'm in some ways a powerful person, I still feel like the world moves me around, and that I don't have full control over things. But I think these guys did a marvelous job of laying out a screenplay where that was possible without too many words.
I'm going to take questions for you, so maybe we can turn the house lights on, but maybe for all three of you, whether it's the writing, production, or the performance, like part of what that quality is putting yourself in a time that we do not live in, and that is so pivotal to what happens. So were there aspects to that process creatively on the set, creating the circumstances or environment? How did you put yourself in a place where these things that were so new at that time that are so old to us?
Well, first of all, good morning. This was quite emotional for me. In parentheses, I cried the whole time in the back of the theater. But you know, my memories actually mostly were around just the writing process. And yes, I was terribly intimidated when we started with this work. But I think one of the things that allowed us to sort of start to find our own way, and for Clint to then sort of to find his voice within this, is that we actually wrote a large part of this up in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, where it's set in a little cabin on the Moye River that's in the movie itself, and where Dennis Johnson spent the end of his life and where he wrote this book too. And we would sort of drive around in the woods and listen to the audiobook of Train Dreams that Will Patton also narrates. And then we would sort of find ourselves in bars talking to loggers, and then go out into these camps and then find Kootenai people with a fish nursery and hold little sturgeon in our hands that look like little dinosaurs, and you're just looking back into the past, but you also feel like you're part of the great fabric of all things. And I think Clint just then was able to, well, actually, I just say this is one of Clint's favorite authors, and I'd never read him before, and making this movie helped me understand my friend a little bit better. And maybe understand a little bit myself. I was in a really tough spot when we were writing this script, just in life, and kind of filled my cup back up a little bit. And I think that's what your character does and what your performance does too, and this sort of idea of like finding optimism again. And I just trust people more who have been knocked down on their ass, and then find belief in each other and find a way forward. And so I think that's what the movie speaks to me.
If you have a question, I'm going to ask it. Please be loud so that we can all hear you and you don't have to repeat the question. Yes, in the very back.
Congratulations on the film. Absolutely amazing. One of the things that struck me was the child actor when baby Kate, when she's 2 or 3. Is she just like a complete natural, or did you
Do you want to talk about twins? They're twins, actually, and they were perfect because one of them was super gregarious and just wanted to be in front of the camera and would do all the cute things that you saw. And then the other one didn't want to be around us at all and would always just walk away. And Joel and Felicity were phenomenal at just being like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing now. That's not how the scene was written. But, so they were, yeah.
Never work with animals or children. It's true, except I think the problem with it is people try and make them work. And you just got to work and follow them. And they're far more pure than any of us can be. And so part of the beauty of all those moments is that we just sort of were patient and let things happen and go, whatever it is going to happen, rather than expect children to live in an adult world or a chicken.
The chickens were the real stuff.
Other questions? Yes, in the red hat.
So, why Train Dreams is the title and not like Tree Dreams or something?
Great question. I don't know. It was a title of the book, Dennis Johnson. But I feel like there's something very evocative about it, of you know, this train being the symbol of the mechanization of the world and industrialization opening up this natural world, and it's this thing that it's blowing off smoke and it's mechanical and it's shooting off sparks, and it's like kind of forcing its way through a much softer world, in a world of trees and wind. And so I don't know why Dennis picked the title, but I think he did a good job.
Yes.
Dreams, the sequel.
Yeah, no, great hat.
Congratulations on the film. Very, very beautiful. The score was obviously so integral to the film, and I was wondering if you could just talk about working with Bryce on that.
Yeah, this is our 4th film with Bryce, and he just does such an amazing job of you know, he's got these classical chops, but he's also in the national and then he writes a lot of beautiful scores. And I think going back to your question, John, about like making things new, there was a lot about like, I didn't want it to feel like a period piece where you're like going back to another time. And something Joel articulated very well is like, we're all the same and we've always been the same. And just wanted people to feel like this kind of newness of the world, because we do live in a very magical place, and just feel like, oh, this is a story that happens to be set another time. All that to say with Bryce, he does this beautiful job of like taking some elements from maybe earlier instrumentation and orchestration, but making it feel very new, and it's amazing.
Yeah, way at the back.
It's stunningly beautiful, like by far. I mean, all Sundance work, and it's one of the best films I've ever seen at the festival. I had the privilege of reading the script, and then when I saw it on screen, my question is, you know, a lot of the imagery of grief and hearing voices and all of that is very relatable to anyone that's gone through it. The question is, when the girl comes back, it feels very real, like the broken leg as you sing it every time. Is that a dream as well, or was that a girl that stumbled into the forest that is or isn't his daughter?
It's a good question, and yeah, you mentioned the imagery, and I think it's worth giving a round of applause to Adolfo Veloso, our cinematographer. I think the question is about his daughter coming back, and I don't necessarily want to answer it in a way of saying it did happen or it didn't, and I think the narrator kind of stepping in and saying, you know, that it felt as real to him as anything else that had happened in the world, in his life, even as he wondered if it had really happened. And I think that's about as close as I can get to it. Whether it actually happened and it was a feral child that came up and he felt like it looked like his daughter, or whether it was his daughter, or whether it was just a figment of his imagination, it seemed like something that he needed to kind of move on in a way.
I think there was a question somewhere over here. Disappeared. I think we have time for one more if anyone has one. Yeah, someone over here I saw. Yes.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm sorry to take up time. My dad was much older than me, and he was really like part of nature as well, and he died when I was young, and this felt like I got to understand him a little bit better, so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. If there was one more in the back, we can take that. Okay, in the green.
You, yeah.
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 Yes.
Just a gorgeous film. I was sobbing the whole time. And
Sorry about that, me too.
I'm not from LA, but you can't help but to think of LA. And do you think this will have, in a way, a healing effect on your neighbors?
I was saying to these guys, you know, everyone, I just flew over from Sydney. Everyone in New South Wales, where I come from, we experience these kinds of things every few years, it seems, and it's New South Wales, and then a couple of years later it's California, but never this sort of experience that we've just seen. These things, you know, they really break me up. I remember having bags ready to go when I was a kid because of the area that I grew up in. I do think this movie is about today as much as it is the past, and I do believe none of us really change, and we have phones and we have all these like creature comforts and technology, but I think we all want and yearn for the same things, and we get knocked down by the same things over and over and over again. And we're always resilient to it, and we live on. And one of the reasons I got involved in the film is because I believe life is worth living. I think that it's a mix of some really great things and some really not great things. It's long, but it's actually really short. And it's significant and it's insignificant. We'll get forgotten about, most of us, but we all did something, hopefully good, you know. But I think the great things about our resilience and the way we actually, at the bottom of everything, we really, really think of each other. We have an instinct to look after each other and to be mindful of each other despite all the other not so great things going on.
Thanks. Really, so happy to have us on here to elicit these questions, and thank you all for the thoughtful questions. Thank you for coming.